Welcome to the podcast about investing in startups, where existing investors can learn how to get the best deal possible. And those that have never before invested in startups can learn the keys to success from the venture experts. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome to another special release of Investor Stories. On this installment, the experts discuss a startup that they did not invest in, why they passed, and if there was a key learning that now informs their approach. Here's the segment called Why I Passed. On today's special segment, we have Jonathan Trieste and Brett Desmarais of Ludlow Ventures. Guys, can you tell me either about why you commonly pass on a startup for investment, or maybe mention a startup that you've passed on that turned out to be a great investment?
Yeah, Brett's reminded me of a bad pass. We passed. I mean, there's been a few big companies that we didn't officially pass on, but it was early in my investing days, and I connected with the founders, whether it was in person or over email, and they kind of gave me the impression like, sorry, we're not really raising money now, which is like just perfect timing to say like, no, you are accepting cash right now, and then invest on the spot. So like I had emailed the founders of Instagram before they were Instagram. They're like, no, thanks. They're like, I don't think it's great timing, but we'll keep you in the loop. And I was like, okay, keep me posted. That would
never happen today.
Yeah. Today I'd be at their door within 30 minutes with flowers. But I passed early on DigitalOcean. I went out to lunch with the founders and the founder's father, who was in town too. They were great guys, very, very smart. And I was an idiot in that. I pass on a lot of good things. Brett passes on less good things. He is smart. It's good to have him on the team.
Thanks. That's like the first nice thing you've ever said.
Well, you deserve it. My birthday's coming up. I want a good birthday present.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, had the same like type of conversations with the founders of Kickstarter, and did the same thing. Like, okay, great. Keep me posted if anything changes. I kind of saw Uber early on. I mean, it never came to me. It definitely didn't come to me. But I knew that the deal was happening, and I just kind of sat back and watched it occur. That one doesn't keep me up at night or anything.
I don't have any of those bad stories yet. I've been doing it less longer, though.
So on today's special segment, we have Christine Tsai of 500 Startups. Christine, can you tell us about a startup that you were very interested in, but you ultimately passed on, and why it was that you passed?
I can think of a couple examples. So there certainly are startups that, talk to a lot of startups throughout the course of 500, and there's certainly been a lot of companies that I was very interested in, but I'm trying to think, a lot of times the common reason that I might have passed on a company was because I thought the valuation was rich. Like I thought the traction didn't merit the valuation that they were asking for. In other cases, I think the reason I might have passed was just more practicality in terms of where we were with 500. Say maybe we were in between funds, so we weren't really actively investing, or I was interested in the company, but they passed on us. So, but I can think like a lot of people will ask, well, what's usually the common reason that you pass on a company if it's not because you just don't think it's a good business or whatnot.
Right.
And I think, ultimately it has been because I felt like the terms just weren't great or just wasn't worth it. Whether that ultimately ended up being, material, whether that mattered or not, there have been a couple times where I passed on a company because I thought, it's kind of expensive. And now that company's gone on to surpass that significantly, and I kind of kick myself. But, that is just generally how things are.
So does that sort of change the way you look at those opportunities when they're overpriced? Do you still take another look, or?
It depends. It's very case by case. I think you think of like the examples of where you passed on a company because it was expensive, and of course they go on to be Uber or whatever. And then only really, this isn't like a consistent problem or anything. But that one, if it's a very big mistake, of course that's all you think about. So I do always try to catch myself if I'm talking to a company and they, seems really great, but then it turns out they're raising at some huge, valuation that I think is a little expensive. It is just definitely very case by case. Like sometimes may bite the bullet and say, okay, it's expensive, but I really feel good about this company, versus, you know what, I just don't really think it's a good deal. So it definitely It's something I try to be aware of though, because, I think like, well, might be expensive now, but if they go on to grow into, some amazing company, then it won't really matter. But of course, it's all in hindsight. You never know.
On today's special segment, we have Stuart Larkins and Ezra Galston of Chicago Ventures. Guys, can you tell us a story about a startup that you passed on and why it was that you passed?
Sure. So it's actually, ironically, one of our current portfolio companies, Spot Hero.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. So when they were doing their initial round, got to know the team, really liked the team. We did some research on the market. It was a little crowded, so that kind of had us a little hesitant. But we started using the product. Actually, Ezra is probably to date the heaviest user of the product in the company's history. But
I used it today.
Yeah. But, this is, 5 years ago. The product was really clunky. So you had to go.
I mean, it wasn't clunky. There was no product.
Yeah. You basically had to print out a piece of paper and put it on the dash of your car. And, half the time you forget it. You have to put your hazards on, go up to your office, print it out. But it was just very clunky. So we were hesitant that the team was going to be able to build a product that would be seamless for a customer or a consumer. And we decided to pass, which was ironic because it was a very, well-funded round with lots of Valley firms. So people thought we were a little crazy, but, you got to stick to your convictions sometimes.
Yeah, one of the funny things about it is that we while we were doing diligence, I found a company out of the Valley that is, completely defunct now, that had this video online of a customer pulling out a QR code with their cell phone, rolling up to a lot, scanning a QR code by a lot gate, the lot door opening. And I sent this around. I said, there's no way we can invest in Spot Hero. This is the future. Anyone who nailed this is going to win. And, we did a little diligence and we called, some lot operators in our network, and they all said, there's no way we're ever going to integrate some third-party software, or it's just not even feasible. It's too expensive. It's too hard to do. The lot software is, really fragmented. And,
Sure.
18 months later, pretty much every lot in Chicago had a QR scanner from Spot Hero.
Right. So we actually led their Series A after passing on the seed.
Wow.
Yep.
Ezra, how did you go from sending that video around and passing on Spot Hero to eventually coming to an investment decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think that based on the amount of diligence we did on the market, I think we were all interested in the market, and we were all users of the quasi-product. Again, there was no product. There was a piece of paper that you put on your dashboard. We were excited about we like saving money parking in any major city, but especially Chicago is really kind of a disaster. But more importantly, we had a vision because we'd done the right diligence on it, of what success would look like in this market, at least 18 months out, what the product at least would need to look like, and they just nailed it. And yeah, as Stuart mentioned, I think I've spent now something like $6,000 through the platform, which interestingly, I always ask them, am I your top 10 customers? And last I checked, I wasn't even top 50, right? So there's some real power users of the platform. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who, I take the train some days, I park downtown some days. So, it's monthly parking isn't for me. And a lot of Chicagoans are the same way. Stuart, you drive in maybe a day or two a week, take the train a lot of days. And so Chicago is a great city for a product like Spot Hero. But there are a lot of cities that are great for it as well.
Do you think Chicago might have a bit of a niche working with SMBs after companies like Spot Hero that are working with distributed parking systems and the Grubhubs of the world and the Groupons as well? I mean, do you think there's a niche here for working with SMBs?
I wouldn't. I don't like to use the word niche. I think that we've got a lot of companies that have been very successful doing that. So it's just the ecosystem. Chicago's a very large city with lots of Fortune 500 companies, and it's a very friendly ecosystem where the CEOs of those companies, a lot of them are actually investors in our fund, or people involved want to help out startups. So you see a lot more people getting involved, which helps those types of biz dev deals. That
will wrap up this installment of Investor Stories. Head over to thefullratchet.net to leave a comment, sign up for the newsletter, or find resources discussed on any of the episodes. Until next time, remember to over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for listening.